want, right? We are willing to go to diverse ends to achieve it. But the question is, are we, the United States, ever crossing the line? Preemptive war is defined as a war waged in an attempt to repel or defeat a perceived inevitable offense or invasion, or to gain a strategic advantage in an impending or allegedly unavoidable war before the threat materializes. This term is often used interchangeably with the term of preventive war. One common yet negative viewpoint of most Americans is that the United States entangles itself in wars and battles and conflicts that essentially have no feasible goals. Our opponents may argue that the United States has the right and the responsibility to defend our nation. And yes, under certain conditions, we can wage war. The Constitution does designate the President as Commander-in-Chief in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. And they are on certain conditions can use the beneficial and necessary clause. But the Constitution reads in Article 1, Section 10, Clause 4, that no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter in any agreement or compact with another state or with foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit to delay. However, just because something's defined as right doesn't mean that there is not a lack of moral credence. The problem is when there's no conclusive proof that the other nation is a threat to us. It's disturbing, yes. It's untraditionalistic and un-American, and something this nation does not do. One way for anyone to increase their knowledge is to look back upon mistakes that have been made by other people and, more importantly, themselves. And upon looking back, we're going to see our great and inspirational leaders that have led us to where we are today. And Thomas Jefferson, our third president, and one of our greatest adventures of our nation, stated on August 28, 1807, to a Secretary of War, and I quote, "We wish them to live in peace with all nations as well with us, and we have no intentions ever to strike them or do them any injury of any sort, unless first attacked or threatened. But that learning that some of them meditate war on us, we too are preparing for war against those, and those only who shall seek it." End quote. This means that we're not going to sit back and let foreigners come and take us over. Yet Jefferson's stating that we're going to be prepared. We'll be ready because we know what's on our way. We're not going to go out and look for war. It's not our duty, however, to wage war when we're not being encroached upon, and the United States are not even a part of it. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd president, led us through a time of worldwide economic crisis and essential world war. He understood that he understood American tradition, and he understood that we were about to go through something tragic. Yet he wanted the Japanese to fire upon us first. That way we wouldn't be accountable for the initiation. And I quote from his diary, "And how should we, the United States, maneuver the Japanese into a position of firing the first shot without allowing too much danger to ourselves?" As Americans who defend the rights of man, we're supposed to know the difference between invading another country purely for our own gain versus truly defending our nation's rights and liberties. No matter what the public opinion states, it cannot be right to invade a country, to destroy that country, and to kill innocent people. All because, well, maybe there's a potential threat. We must also consider the inconvenience thrust upon our daily lives, our economy, and the financial bind it will put us in. But we'll discuss that in a second. According to the National Strategy for Victory, which is a governmental doctrine that is open admission of national wrong upheld to the standards of American ideals, states that it cannot be right to do this in order to remove their leaders, in order to deprive third-party terrorists of shelter, in order to keep terrorists on the run, or in order to deliver a decisive blow in ideology. Yet these are the precise reasons given to us by our leaders of why we invaded Iraq. Yes, it scares us for them to have destructive tools, but they're not interrupting us, threatening us, or encroaching upon us. The fact of the matter is, what is right is that we keep peace. We try to maintain that peace. All we can do justifiably is be prepared in case of an attack, expected or not. Take into account that the United States has manufactured nuclear weapons before, and they may secretly be doing so now. So what's to stop, and what was to stop other countries from invading us just because they, felt threatened? You see, they don't know our motives for what we do in our activities, just as we don't know theirs. Just because we call something a war the president's rightful powers as commander-in-chief are not called into effect. This so-called war on terror is not the unique example of such military and political exaggeration concerning our country today. Americans are urged to agree on enlarged governmental powers to fight the war on poverty, the war on drugs, the war on crime, and even say the war on obesity. Does anyone believe, though, that, say, waging a war on obesity, that the president could declare McDonald's employees enemy combatants and its fatty foods weapons of mass destruction, and could deploy armed forces to occupy its restaurants and even tap its phones without submitting to judicial review? Constitutionally speaking, war is a very specific set of legal relations between two or more independent nations. The preamble states that we, the people, do ordain and establish this Constitution, among other purposes, to lay and collect taxes, to provide for the common defense. For defense only, not for aggression. You see, when we enter into another territory, we are then on the offense, because we're not defending anything by being over there. Sometimes interpretations of providing for the common defense turns into an offensive spread of democracy for the sake of democracy, not for the sake of our nation's defense. The constitutional authority of the United States is to guarantee every state in this union a republican form of government. Article 4, Section 4. Neither could a declaration of war be justified simply on the grounds of defending some other country. The Constitution empowers Congress to lay and collect taxes and to provide for the common defense of the United States. If a war is being fought for the common defense of another country and not the United States, Congress cannot lawfully lay and collect taxes to finance it. Our Congress, however, stepped outside their constitutional authority by authorizing a preemptive strike on terrorists for an undetermined threat. They stretched the definition of what providing for our common defense entails and how it's paid for. Is taxing legitimate to pay for this? Force is not a constitutional term. Nowhere in the Constitution empowers Congress to exercise force itself or enable the president to do so. If force is simply not a synonym for war, then what does it mean? Any type of level of violence directed against anyone for any reason? The laws of war, the laws of nations, and the laws of the United States. Violence is not related to the common defense. Violence that is destructive of justice, domestic tranquility, and the blessing of liberty within the United States. Obviously, to make sense of the term, Congress has to define force very distinctly and set specific parameters with which it can be used. Example, when, how, by whom, for what purposes, and with what limitations, so on and so forth. First real preemptive use after the Cold War, which goes against all traditions and American ways, was that of the Bush Doctrine. The reasonings, furthermore, were illegitimate and not justified, which my partner, Ms. Robertson, will expand upon momentarily. In conclusion, Jefferson and the other leaders who constructed the Declaration of Independence, and even the framers of our Constitution, if they could see what we're doing and what we're contemplating on doing, they would probably have a heart attack. Because our ideals of today are so different from what they had planned that they'd be appalled. And see, the Declaration of Independence is not intended to promote offensive use of force in an attempt to preempt a potential threat, and goes against our fundamental principles of honor, integrity, principle of self, and tradition. I want to take a step back from the whole legal standpoint of this and bring to you this. When we think of the United States, what do we think as the building blocks? The people, right? We, the people. And branching off of people is family. When I am asked how many siblings I have, I tell people 2 brothers. But in all actuality, I have 3. I had 3. Before December 13th, 2005. That's when my oldest brother Joshua died in Iraq. You see, he was wounded and he got shot twice, and he died from internal bleeding. And you see, the emotional strain put on us from going over there to fight for something we don't even know. See, it's okay that Joshua gave up his life because thousands of people do that. But when you go over there and you defend, but how can you defend when you're over there? Because say, take a basketball game. When you're on defense, you're not at their goal, you're at yours. And you see, I'll never forget something that happened when my mother found out that her firstborn had died. And you know, she found out and she fell back into her chair like a frail old woman. and I saw something that no child should ever see from their parent, and that was defeat. And she cried. You know, she showed a sign of being broken. And that's what war has the potential of doing, is breaking families. And you know, I feel that if this war, or if wars didn't occur, that families would stick together, because it's breaking the people, and like we stated, that's the fundamental guideline of what the United States is. And you know, thereafter what happened, I feel could have prevented if Joshua's death did not occur. See, my mother, she packed her bags and she moved out. And she filed a property settlement and divorce on my father, and now she's moving out of state. And I feel all this could have been avoided, but you see, I feel she's running and she's trying to search for something that she's never going to find, because Joshua took that with him when he went to war. Just like the nations taken from us when we go to war. You see, when we go to fight, we send our loved ones. And our loved ones are supposed to be the ones that we see as ultimate. And so if we're willing to put them in that type of position, it better be for a hell of a good reason, wouldn't you say? That's why I feel that preemptive war is insufficient, ineffective, and unjustifiable. Freedom. It's what we want, right? We are constantly going to diverse ends to achieve it. But the question still remains, is the United States ever crossing the line? My name is Cati Sneed, and I am 100% for the opposition. And I thank you all for your time.